Morning, everybody. Welcome to the seasoned session. Seasoned is a yellow tea. We're in the midst of 3 yellow teas. Last week we did veiled and we got an introduction to the process. Seasoned will definitely have a different flavor profile. So this week we'll spend time doing a little bit more of the science and chemistry related to yellow teas, but not so much that you're inundated with that. So I think we're going to start right out because typically I get distracted and I talk about shop news, and the next thing I know, everybody's thirsty, and it's like less shop news, more yellow tea. So that's what we're going to do today. So let's first look at the map. So I sent you a map which was different from last week's map. So let's look at that map because I want to place you to where we're going. So I'm going to get my copy of the map out as well and make sure we're all thinking about the same place. All right, so I am looking, I found my map. Okay, so where you want to look on this map, let's find the capital of Anhui first, Hefei. It's right in the center, H-E-F-E-I. We did this last week. We're going to go west and follow the rail line. You see a place called Luan. And last week I was supposed to tell you and link a little bit more about Luan and Veiled, and I didn't do it. So we'll do that this week because actually Luan has a relationship with this week's tea as well. So you get to Luan, and instead of following the rail line, there's a brown line, which I assume is a road that goes down to a place called Huoshan, H-U-O-S-H-A-N. So that's one place I want you to know because it comes from close to Huoshan. Now, close means it's still west, and it actually comes from mountains in the Dabie Shan, and go west here, D-A-B-I-E-S-H-A-N. Now, that's a whole set of mountains on the far west of Anhui. What is special about those mountains? Those mountains create a temperate climate for the tea to exist. It does get cold during the winter. So you saw that I sent in the photographs some pictures of winter, and those are pictures farmers sent us. And so it snowed. It's colder than usual this year. We don't know yet what that's going to mean for next year's crop, but usually coldness early in the season is a good thing. And coldness early in the season usually ends up increasing the amino acids. We like amino acids, not because we're bodybuilders. We like the amino acids from a taste perspective. From a taste perspective, they tend to leave the tea leaves with more sweetness. And we're going to talk about amino acids and sweetness and sucrose and all that good stuff as we explore the chemistry. But you see the location now. You see that location is different than Veiled location, not by a lot. And you all see that there's a relationship in terms of ability to get from Luan into these areas. Why is that important? So Anhui has been over the centuries a leader in tea technology. And it really started when the emperor, the first Ming emperor in 1368, issued the decree which said the first word, obey. And then he goes on and further says, okay, no more cake teas. This wastes peasants' time. It disturbs the currency. lots of things wrong with cake tea. We're not going to do that anymore. And remembering that from the Tang Dynasty forward, cake tea was really the rage. When is the Tang Dynasty again? Roughly between 618 and 960. So from that time forward, making compressed cakes of green tea was the rage in China. It actually started a little earlier than the Tang Dynasty, but the techniques became refined during the Tang Dynasty. And remember, everybody thinks, well, obviously you don't think because you're on the sessions, but many people think that the Japanese invented matcha. I am sorry to have to inform you that that's not true. The caked teas were in the Tang Dynasty, what was already happening with chip, 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 grind it up, and that's how they served tea. So the Japanese actually imported that technique back to Japan starting around the 772, 773, and it was Buddhist. All right, so how does this all link up to Anhui? Well, you had lots of Buddhist temples in Anhui. And that Buddhist temples, a concentration of Buddhist temples, or a network of Buddhist temples and Taoist temples, promoted experimentation. And it also promoted communication of techniques. And that's why when the Ming Emperor said no more cake teas, the Buddhists and the Taoists started experimenting in various places. And as they experimented, accidents happened. And that's great because accidents led to new techniques of making tea. Yellow tea, if you ask me the question, okay, was it a result of one of these mistakes? We don't know. Nobody actually has a 100% answer. There's lots of research that's been done on yellow tea, but it really looks like that was a tea that came into existence in probably the late 1700s, maybe even later than that. There's a suggestion that it actually came into existence in the 1860s because a farmer was experimenting and went that direction, but we don't have enough documentary evidence. What we do have is a bunch of guesses. And many of those guesses are led by incorrect information. So what sort of incorrect information causes people to make a bad guess? When something inherently is yellow and then made into tea using green tea techniques, there has been the thought, oh, well, that's how yellow tea started. That would be false. Remember, yellow tea is a modality. It's a processing modality. It is not the inherent color of the tea leaf growing on the bush. There are varietals throughout China, not many, but there are varietals in the Wuyi Mountains, there are varietals in Anhui where the tea leaves actually are yellow. That is not yellow tea. It's how the tea leaves are made, how they're processed, that creates the yellow tea process. And the yellow tea process, as we start to move towards chemistry and science and long words, my favorite part, the yellow tea process is, in quotes, about sealing in the yellow. And so there's a Chinese term for that, which is hideously difficult to translate, menhuang. And so it's like compressing in the yellow or trapping the yellow. There are a bunch of ways that you may see this translated. The way that I like best is the sealing in the yellow. So this gets you location. It tells you that no scholar can authoritatively say to you that, oh, it started in 1521. False. We don't have historical evidence that everybody accepts. In fact, we have very little evidence about this tea, and particularly in this location. So in this location, historically, yellow tea was famous from the 1800s through the early 1900s, and then it disappeared. Now, how does the tea disappear? Well, the tea leaves themselves didn't disappear, because from around 200 BC all the way up to the 1900s, tea from this area was famous. Most of the tea from this area was produced as green tea. It was tribute tea in the Tang Dynasty. So the quality of what's growing in this area has been famous for a long time. But the process of making it yellow tea disappeared, and it disappeared by the time 1949 rolled around and the communists took over. Yellow tea essentially went away, and it wasn't revived until the 1970s. So in the interim, and actually before that, we should understand that tea from that area was being done as green tea and red tea. And that's it. So why was it resurrected in the 1970s? It was resurrected because people thought historically, gosh, this is something we are proud of. We ought to go back and look at this. And then a huge amount of effort in the early 1980s to document, to find the old masters who still knew how to do it, and then to encourage further production. So yellow tea, after it was resurrected in this area, and I'm really only talking about this area. So let's not get confused, because I may have misled you to think that all yellow tea. No, I'm talking about this particular varietal in this area, which is very famous in China. This got resurrected and started winning awards in China in the 1990s. So they got the process up and rolling by the 1990s, and we're doing a really, really good job. Okay, so that kind of sets the background for this particular yellow tea that we're going to focus on today, season. What's the process of doing this? And we're going to start in a very brief minute to have you start to brew, but I want to walk you quickly through the process. You obviously pick the leaves. You pick the leaves, you get them to the processing area, you wither them for a very, very, very short time, and you almost immediately get them to the frying stage. Does this remind you of something? It should remind you of green tea, because you get to that frying stage real, real quick in order to stop oxidation, in order to denature the oxidative enzyme. Well, you get it very quickly to the wok frying. And nowadays they use a tumbler in some cases to denature that enzyme. They fry them for a shorter time with yellow tea. They fry them at a slightly lower temperature with yellow tea. And from there, the process goes different than green tea, because green tea, we know, oh, roll it up, bake it to get the right amount of moisture, and boom, sort it and get it in a package. Not yellow tea. Here's where it becomes complicated. It takes a long time. So you fry and then you bake immediately, low temp. Why? You're trying to reduce the moisture. Why would you want to reduce the moisture? Tea leaves are easier to handle with less moisture. You roll, And usually this style of tea is rolled light, heavy, and light. So you go through 3 iterations of the rolling, and then you heat it up again a little bit, and then you, in quotes, spread it. Spreading is a bad term, but it's a term that you'll see used. Really, what they mean by that is you divide it into about 100-gram packages, and you put it in a humidity and temperature controlled room, and in quotes, you seal the yellow. So what you're trying to do is actually change the composition of the tea leaves through this process. How long do you do it? You do it for some period under 72 hours. Now, in this particular area, you do it for roughly 13 hours divided over 2 or 3 days. All right, let me get you to here, and let's start the demonstration on how to make this tea. So without further ado, let me bring in the master yellow tea maker, Sophie. All right.
I'm understudy.
I'm just studying my foot.
Hi, Sophie.
Hey, 你好. How are you? Good morning, everyone. Yeah. Today, see how we do yellow tea. So this is my style, huh? This is yellow tea from Huashan. So Anhui, this tea bag, huh? Yeah, the 4 grams, weigh same grams. Okay, I do just help me.
Yeah. So you see the tableau is what you would expect. She's got 3 cups. These are to dissipate the steam. Have a tea tray here, a volcanic rock here in the strainer. What you at a minimum should have is 2 cups in the strainer. Everything else is optional. So she's heating the cups, same procedure as we always go through. And you can use any temperature between 175 and 212 to heat the cups. Making sure that all the cups are thoroughly rinsed. Making sure that all the tools are thoroughly rinsed. Okay, so now she's going to use 175-degree water, and she's going to dissipate the steam. That looks like fun, just playing with water. But in fact, it is dissipating the steam. And what is the benefit of dissipating the steam? When you dissipate the steam, when you use that water for tea, if it is the right starting temperature, you heighten the flavors. And you notice we never cover this type of tea. If you cover, you will, in quotes, seal in the flavor and you'll flatten it.
So never cover the mouth, the brewing instrument.
Never cover the brewing instrument when you're doing yellows. And you notice, not in a hurry, just making sure it's done correctly. She gets the water back into the pot. Why? Because the pot has a spout and it's easier to control where you're going to pour on the cup. And remember, we don't want to pour directly on the leaves if we can help it. we want to pour on the side of the cup and get the water under the leaves. She's put in the 4 grams of seasoned, which is in package number 2. She's shaking, and then she's smelling just to make sure it's the right tea. Start the process. And your timers, when you do this, will be set for 2 minutes. I just set ours here for 2 minutes. You know she's pouring on the side.
And for those who do have 170 degrees as an option on their water temperature, their water pot is the 170 degree brewing temperature that you're shooting for, right?
Yeah, it is 170 degree temperature you're shooting for. But let's be clear. Sometimes you don't have precision over the temperature. If you're going to err on temperature, always err on the side of cooler. But 170 is perfect. All right, so we've got the 2 cups set up. We're in the process here. We're talking about the processing modality. We're wrapping it or covering this tea for about 6 hours after we uncover the tea. And this is after it's been rolled. Okay, so it's been fried, rolled, and at this point, after it's wrapped, it is unwrapped and then fried again at a lower temperature. When it is, it's still greenish. After that time, the next time they wrap and fry, it'll be more yellowish. You'll start to see a change in color when they're processing. At the end of the time, and again, every farmer, and we'll talk about why in a minute, every farmer is doing a different amount of time. And I said up to 72 hours. When you do Junshan needle, you do that for 3 full days. You use special paper. Here they're not using special paper. Instead, they're using cloth. And they're wrapping it in 100-gram increments. So you see, when you think about the cost of production, why would a farmer skip this step? Oh my God, I need space. I need lots of cloth. I need lots of people supervising this. I need a humidity controlled room. Wow, wouldn't it just be easier if I called it yellow tea and just dumped it into the package and sold it that way at the price that yellow tea is supposed to fetch? And the answer, of course, is yes, it would be easier, but that's not the right process. And that's the thing as a consumer you have to watch out for. Because there is some tea that LC put the mark on, claiming it's yellow tea, but it is not. It's green tea. So the 2 minutes went off. Tea master carefully separated the leaves from the tea liquid. So we're going to enter the quality arena in a minute. And then we're going to first start off by smelling this, smelling and observing the leaves. So this is already distinctly different than veiled. And you'll notice that once we do it with you. All right, the next thing we're going to do is enter the quality arena. So we're going to look at the color of this thing. Is that tea liquor yellow? Oh, that's a good start. It is yellow. And what we want to figure out here is, what is the mouth feel? Where does it dry the tongue? What sort of aftertaste is there? These are all the things we're looking at, and what sort of energetics does it give you? So that's what I'm going to see here. I'm going to take a 170-degree sip. So that means I can put enough in my mouth to actually cover my tongue. Slowly, of course, carefully. So I'm thinking about the energy characteristics, about the mouth feel characteristics. I'm thinking about the aftertaste, and I'm seeing if I sense any energetic shift. So these are the first steps of tea rhythm as you're making a judgment about the tea. I might do this again. And as I do it again, I'm now also starting to think of temperature, actual, not temperature, but actual flavor, aroma, all of those attributes for which I'm later going to make commentary. And actually, you're going to make commentary first and tell me what this tea is about. But the one thing I will tell you right away is that this is different from Veda. All right, your turn to brew. So hopefully you have your tableau set up. And you're getting your water ready. So you make sure your cups are absolutely clean. Any temperature between 170 and 212. And whether you're using 1 cup, I'm sorry, 2 cups or 3 cups, you don't have to use 3 cups. We do it for speed of dissipation of steam, but you're fine to do 2 cups at home, 0 problem. And now you're about to use the 175 or 170 if that's what you have. You're dissipating the steam. Okay, you're getting that where you want it. You notice there's not a big rush to do this. Tea Master is about ready to pour it back into a spigoted pot. And she's got out bag number 2, labeled seasoned, putting it in the cup, which is what you should be doing. Set your timer for 2 minutes. Shake the leaves so you apply heat to the leaves. And you pour on the side of the cup, not directly on the leaves. And you hit your timer. Okay. So what's the chemistry? Oh, yes, and you heat the recipient cup as well. What's the chemistry that's important with the sealing process, sealing the yellow? First off, it makes the tea itself, the tea liquid, taste mellower and softer. Why? There's a decrease in the catechins, and the longer, up to about 13 14, no, it's 10 hours. The longer you do it, the fewer catechins there are. Yeah.
Question about the leaves from a participant. Are those stems that he sees in there?
Yes. So the participant has asked, are there some stems in here? And yes, there are. And in this particular varietal, they do that to bulk up the body. And that's why they don't separate the stems from this. Much like some of the white teas have some stems in them for the same reason, to bulk up the body. All right, so mellowness, because there's a decrease in catechins. What flavor do catechins usually enhance? They enhance astringency. Yellow tea is an attempt to cut out that astringency or reduce the astringency. And of course, when the first farmers did this, they didn't know that. They saw that the process reduced the astringency. So from a flavor perspective, they liked that. And that's how they went, that's how they produced their tea. But now subsequently, we know from scientists, this is the actual effect. All right, the 2 minutes is up. And you're going to separate the tea leaves, I should say. From the tea liquid. Okay, you notice that you did that slowly. The color of yours should look like this. So it's yellowish. And you're going to go ahead and enter the quality arena. Take a look at the leaves. Smell the leaves. Smell your tea liquor. Think about what you had last week and think about how it's different. And while you're thinking about that, the other thing that sealing the yellow does is increase the amino acids. And an increase of the amino acids actually adds to the sweetness. And for certain amino acids, it also seems to add to the mellowness of the tea. So the other aspect from a chemical standpoint, and we're not going to spend a lot of time in the weeds here, because if you get me going, we'll spend the next half hour in the weeds, and that's not a good thing. But there's 10 times more gallic acids in the yellow teas than there are in the green teas. And it is thought that that massive increase in the gallic acids also adds to a mellowness of the yellow teas. From a health perspective, the Japanese have always argued that yellow tea is great for the liver. Well, this week I was able to find plenty of Chinese articles which talked about how it seems to, and especially for sure in mice, it attacks cancer cells that are found in a liver cancer. So this is probably the source of where the Japanese feel that there's such a big benefit to the liver.
The scent is round, says a participant, a round scent.
Round scent. I like this. You know how some teas hit you as either a bright aroma or a flatter aroma, or you think of the aroma as being immediately associated with an attribute of where the tea comes from. This particular commentator has talked about the roundness of the scent. Great starting comment.
Someone else says she gets, her comment is that the aroma today delivers a subtle umami and a vegetal chord quiet intensity.
So a umami, a subtle umami and vegetalness that is a forward,
Kind of a quiet, intense aroma.
a quiet, intense aroma. Thank you. I love this comment because, you know, the yellowing process in some ways also usually dulls the umami a little bit. But in this particular one, the umami is apparent and there is a force behind this that is different from last week's veil. Remember, let's think about what we talked about last week. When we talked about veil last week, right away, people noted a sweetness, they noted an underlying roastiness, they noted a lot of things right off the bat, but nobody said smooth roundness. They didn't talk about this force of umami and vegetalness. So you are all distinctly catching the differences between these two teas.
Another taster also describes this as rich, umami, aromatic, and with depth.
Rich, umami, aromatic, and with depth. Love this description. This is, you can't get away from this tea easily. So what I mean by that is as you're going through it, it kind of hangs all throughout your mouth. And that depth of flavor leaves you no doubt that there's a lot going on with this.
The leaves in the bag have a spicy, almost cinnamon-like aroma, but the heated leaves were malty. And then the wet leaves aroma was woodsy and something else that I can't identify.
Spicy dry, malty wet, and then when we get to the actual tea liquor, hard to really fully identify, but it's different than that initial hint of spiciness in the dried leaves, different than the maltiness. It's almost like a woodsiness is what this commentator indicated.
Exactly, so spicy, dry, heated without any water, malty.
Malty, okay.
But then the woodiness hit as soon as the leaves were wet.
Oh, okay. So this was all about the leaves. So spicy, you add heat, malty, you add the water, it becomes woodsy. And, you know, even as I smell it, and I'm thinking about what you're saying, there definitely is, I like that woodsy. There's woodsy and something else in that smell.
Which is what the commentator said actually was, she said, wow, there's something else in here I can't identify, but then added, it has a lovely sweet aftertaste.
Ah, lovely sweet aftertaste. So you note, again, compared to veil. Veil, people led with a sweetness as they got into the tea. This, they're noting a sweet aftertaste. So you don't get that initially on the tongue. You get that in the aftertaste.
Taster shares, there's a feel on his tongue that's similar to veiled. Last Vegetality is similar, but it's not popcorn. It's something smoother.
So love this comment. So now we're really getting into that comparison because commentator says, hey, last week you served us popcorn. This week, this is not popcorn. This has something else going on with it. It's even smoother than last week.
Another taster says, ditto on the malty comment, and then viscosity. The viscosity spreads to the top of his mouth, which is uncommon.
So the viscosity for this commentator goes all the way to the top of the mouth, which for this commentator is uncommon. And actually, when you think about this, you're aiming for a place that I like. And I'm going to use a little bit different wording, but I don't disagree with your wording at all. And what I'm going to say is that there's a density to this that was not, there was a fullness to veil, but This is more than fullness. This is dense. And in some ways, I almost want to use a word that normally I reserve for other styles of tea. And I would say that there is an intensity to this as well.
Another taster suggests briny, question mark?
So this commentator used the word briny, which means that what they're really catching is an umami-ness in here. And there is an umami-ness in this. So that's a good catch.
Another taster says, this is a fast tea for me. I'm more than halfway down the cup already.
I love this comment. And you know what? We should probably include this type of comment in every single tea that we taste, because some teas, in quotes, are slow teas. Some teas, in quotes, are fast tea. For this commentator, this is a fast tea. And the indication or the implication here, easy to drink. And so easy to drink, you want to keep drinking. And you get through a cup very fast. We've had some teas where when people come in here, they drink them in under 2 minutes. It's like, wait a minute, what just happened? And so for this commentator, this belongs in that category. And what these categories imply is uniformity. Because when you have uniformity of taste, when you get the taste at the beginning and the taste at the middle and the taste near the end is roughly the same, you drink faster. But in teas where they're either hotter or that taste is really spreading out, you have to slow down. Love this comment.
Another taster says she finds this to be elegant and complex in many aspects, like an orchestra of blended dancing instruments playing a lovely piece of music.
So this commentator compares to an orchestra of blended instruments and talks about what this commentator is really talking about is the complexity of this and the depth of this. There is not a single note in this. This is multiple notes. There is lots going on. And yet, going back to the last commentator, it's not changing in that complexity. It's the same complexity as you go through. So you're drinking faster.
Another taster is also having that experience of the speedy cup. Fast for her as well. She's finding the flavor is much more delicate than veiled.
So this commentator talks about this flavor being more delicate than veiled and also being a fast cup of tea. And I like how this is being addressed. And let me kind of, let's see, how do I want to, I want to just turn this around slightly, because the delicate portion of this comment compared to veiled, I like it, but I have to explain why I like it. Veiled pops up in your mouth. It's that corn sensation that just pops up. There's no hiddenness about that. That's really up there. And then there's some underlying sweetness and there's some butteriness. This, on the other hand, because of its consistency, has, if the delicate refers to that, I really accept that, because it isn't popping up, although it's very dense. So we're using all these terms that to an outsider might seem contradictory. They're not contradictory, but I think we always have to make them fit in, or always have to explain what we're talking about. And they really do fit in.
No other comments from the tasters, but to the tasters, I want to say, especially for a tea like this, please put your comments on the website, because their comments are brilliant and really certainly help me understand the tea better. But it would be amazing for people to be able to go to the website and hear from the super tasters what you find the taste to be. Just Just an ask.
Thank you very much, Elise. Yes, this is helpful to your fellow tasters, tasters out in the world who are trying to figure out what it is that they like and what is in the teas and so forth. And yes, actually, you may not be aware that sometimes some of your comments really stimulate us internally to give fuller descriptions. And we appreciate that, because by having the group taste like this and go through all of these comments, you actually parse things in a way that are extremely helpful. And this is actually, when we're in China and when we're with a group of people in the tea industry, this is how we go through tea. Everybody's tasting, oh, it's a little of this, a little of that, and we're comparing and bantering back and forth. It's the same sort of exchange, and that's really great.
Somebody else has said, hey, there's another component to the aftertaste that I can't identify, but it's almost roasty, question mark.
Okay, I like this comment. So this commentator says, okay, we've been fooling around with all the taste elements in this, but we really haven't identified roastiness. There is a little roastiness, isn't there? Is what this commentator states. And indeed, there is. So what is the origin of this roastiness? Remember, they're taking these and for X amount of time covering, sealing in the yellow, taking off the cover. These are in 100-gram packages. They're re-baking. So this gets baked 3 times. So that's a lot of baking. So at some point, what I feel you're sensing is that abundance of baking that occurs. It's baking, but it's different than the baking that goes on, say, with a cliff tea. With the cliff tea, because that's also baked 3 times, but it's baked hotter, longer, and over a 3-month period. This is baked lesser temperature, shorter amount of time. You don't get that sense of so much charcoal at all in this. And that's why this one is different, but it's definitely there. All right, so these are outstanding comments. Let me finish up the processing. As they spread the tea 2 or 3 times, and by spread the tea is they're unwrapping, mixing all the 100-gram packages together, repackaging. The last time that they bake, what are they attempting to do? They're attempting to get the moisture in the tea leaf down to about 6 or 7%. That's what they're attempting to do. And they're also, as it turns out, attempting one other thing. They want to soften up the tea leaf itself. So this is all part of the process of doing this yellow tea. And this one has a difference because of the location. It's the varietal, which is different. It's the farmers themselves who have a different process. But remember, I said I was going to tie this all back to Luan. We looked at that map and you saw Luan. So Luan is where Premier's Choice comes from. That's a green tea. They have this very unique process of roasting, which no other green tea has. And in the old days, they used to have a basket about 3 feet long, 2 handles on each side. You had 2 men, 2 people, I should say. There was a fire pit, but they had ash on it, so it was mostly heat coming up. And for an hour, they would just go back and forth over it. And so that created the sense that you can roast things without going what we would go through in a typical baking process where you put it in, you leave it alone, and in X amount of time, you take it out, and that's a finished product. Well, all of these processes are going through this complicated series of steps, and that seems to be a hallmark of many of the Anhui teas. So we see it in the yellow tea, we see it with Premier's Choice, with green tea, we see it with Wong's Creation, where every single leaf is rolled and then put in strips before it's baked. We see it in Chima Needle, where you go through 6 or 7, that's a red tea, 6 or 7 steps, and then at the end you go through a bunch of fine tuning where every single leaf is touched. Anhui produces all these unusual processes that over time they develop themselves. This is a historical anomaly, and it was passed by monks from one place to another, and it got corrupted. And corrupted is the wrong word. I use corrupted in the way that you might be trying to watch a video disc and one of the channels gets, in quotes, corrupted. In other words, it's changed and it doesn't work. Well, bivarietal, I think, as the monks went from place to place, and the monks at the particular temple would make, not corruption, but make changes in the process. And so is veil done exactly like a season? No, it is not. But there's similarities, and everybody is doing the seal, the yellow. But how long they do it, what is reflected in the varietal itself, what the results are in the varietal itself, how am I doing? Okay, still okay. And what the end results are very, very different, so but they're related.
Evolution versus corruption, as Taster says.
Ah, thank you. This is great. I used understudy corruption. You tasters use the right word, evolution. Evolution is much better than what I'm saying. Yes, it is an evolution. And this is why. So where is yellow tea produced again? So let's go through this so you understand why all these varietals of yellow tea are so different. Because there's huge distances between them. Anhui, Hunan, Sichuan, and Zhejiang province. There's also a little bit in Guangdong province. So the amount of yellow tea historically, up until recently, has been infinitesimally small. Generally speaking, it only stayed in the area it was produced. These days, there's 3 times as much yellow tea being produced today as there was in 2000, the year 2000. So it's growing in popularity. Why is it growing in popularity? A couple reasons. First off, the farmers who are actually producing yellow tea are now getting a premium. So it's worth their while to do it. That's the first thing. The second thing is the market itself likes the mellowness of the yellow tea. Just like the market here, where some people assume that, oh, green tea, well, that's bitter. In the Chinese market, at the lower ends, you have the same assumption. Oh, green tea? No, I don't think so. Give me yellow tea, because yellow tea has a mellower approach to the system. So this is, and it's going to continue. The government also is trying to stimulate growth of yellow tea because they recognize that it's a product that the market, especially in China, likes. It's not widely popular outside of China. So in the West, everybody, or not everybody, but most people, many people have heard of yellow tea, but have never had it. And when you go to a tea store, you almost can't find more than one at any tea store. So That's one of the issues with yellow tea, availability and widespread understanding. So that's why we wanted to share this with you and share this whole series with you so that you can have a better understanding, get some idea of what the range of yellow teas are. All right, I think we're close to the end of our time. Yeah, we are close to the end of our time. Great comments from all of you. We'll wrap it up next week with a more comprehensive look, an overall look of what we've done these last 3 weeks. We'll wrap it all up with a yellow tea called Embrace. So your task for this week is to stay healthy. And we very, very much look forward to seeing you next week. You all take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.